Okay, so one of the most powerful lies that has been given to humanity over the past 2,000 years is the idea that spiritual transcendence, salvation, achieving nirvana, whatever words you want to use, to talk about the spiritual and physical evolution of the human being. One of the biggest lies that has been given to you about that is that this is some kind of easy transformation that happens to you if you just take the red pill, or if you just accept so and so, or if you are part of such and such religion, or something like that. That is a lie. And it's a lie that is easily accepted by the human psyche for survival purposes, but it's also a very convenient way of keeping human beings in the pool of, structured society, being part of, just a cog in the wheel of the machine of the empire that, because that's really, we've evolved to be these social beings, and just like chimpanzees and gorillas and other apes, there's a social structure. And so in order to keep the social structure alive, it sort of fits. And if somebody wants to be in power over you, all they have to do is just appeal to that need that you have to be part of the crowd. So I want to help you with understanding why human beings resist transcendence. And the reason I'm making this video is because I recently rolled out this new 90-day challenge lightning qigong practice, which, as you know, if you've been following my channel, is a forbidden practice. In fact, I was strictly told 30 years ago I could not share this in public. I couldn't even talk about it. And before that, the people who originally came up with this practice, they did it off in secret, because if the ruling elite found out the power of this practice, they would hunt them down and destroy them. And so we are in a new time period where human beings are on the cusp of complete and total transformation. Ascendance is coming. This is why there's so many, crises in the world. This is what the global pandemic, what the cause of that is, the reason why we manifested that, the reason why there's all of this doubt and chaos when it comes to society, when it comes to politics, and all of the crazy things that's happening in the news is a result of that. There is a resistance within the human psyche, as well as in the human population, the collective unconscious. There is a resistance to this ascendance that is coming. It's actually here. And so if we understand what the reasons are, why we have this resistance to ascend, we will have that much more ability to be able to consciously move forward. Now, I've been revealing this practice for about 60 days now. We're now on phase 2. We're coming up on phase 3 pretty quickly. And as I said, this practice was kept secret. Now, one of the things that protected the practice was that the transcendence itself was so astonishing and so amazing that people's natural internal resistance to transformation would kick in. So that in itself would keep a lot of people out. I have chosen to teach this publicly through this very public medium of the Patreon channel and on the free YouTube channel. And so as more and more people are joining the practice, I'm getting more and more feedback talking about both of the things I told you would happen. So those of you who are practicing this, you now know I wasn't just hyperbolizing. In fact, you're experiencing that it was perhaps even more intense than you thought it was going to be for you. So what happens first is you feel the power. You feel the changes come in. You start to feel the energy, because what we're doing is very simple. This is the great thing about the lightning qigong practice, is that it's incredibly simple. Even though it was kept secret, it was simple. And that is something also that you should know. There's a lot of spiritual practices out there that are very complicated, and they lead to transcendence. But you have to go through all of these levels, and each meditation you do or each practice you do is very complicated, and most people can't put that kind of discipline and thought into these very complicated spiritual practices. I mean, how many of you have learned Tai Chi in an hour? It's very difficult. I mean, it's very powerful, but you have to learn this and you have to do that. So when you learn the most powerful techniques, they are the most simple, and it's literally as easy as flipping a switch. So that's the easy part. If you just put this hand here and you adopt this posture and this mudra, whatever it is, the things that I teach you to do in this 90-day package, you'll see there's immediate connection to this heretofore unknown power within the body called the lightning power that resides in the heart center, that protects the soul from the harshness of three-dimensional reality. And all you have to do is just know what meridians in the body to stimulate, and you can do that very easily by just adopting certain hand mudras, certain postures, and all of a sudden you feel the power immediately being released. So that's the great thing is that you feel this power immediately, but then comes the resistance. And so some of you have been contacting me. You contacted me in the beginning when you first started practicing, and you said, yes, I'm having more awareness of my thoughts and my feelings, and I'm experiencing this power. I mean, I wish I should probably have I got the testimonials and read them to you, but this is what people are telling me, is that I have more awareness, I have more happiness, my day seems to be going more smoothly, and I'm sleeping better, and I'm feeling younger and more powerful, and all the things that I told you would feel, right? But I also told you that you have to be prepared, because when you go through this kind of transformation so quickly, the body and the mind has to adjust. And so there may be unconscious resistance. And so I'm getting more and more, now as more and more people are doing it, I'm getting more and more communications from people talking about the resistance that they're feeling, and they want to understand, why do I have this resistance from doing these practices? What can I do to overcome it? So we're going to talk today about the three main reasons that human beings resist. Realize that there's a reason why cults exist, why religions exist, why governments and politics exist. Because the truth is, there was a point in time when human beings were just part of the natural landscape, and we didn't see things like borders and nations. We were just living in this enormous world. Of course, there was a lot less of us, but we were just part of the existing flora and fauna of this amazing place. But nowadays we have nations and borders, and we fight with people, and we separate ourselves into politics, religion, language, ethnicity, and all of that nonsense. All of that nonsense is created to do one thing: to keep you in the state that you're in. Because right now in our evolutionary state, we are in a state where we are part of a society. We are part of a structure. And so when you start to evolve, you start to break out of that. And that in itself will create resistance. And it's designed to hit you. The resistance is designed to keep you hypnotized, to keep you part of the machine. So if you want to have true awareness, if you want to have true ascendance, true mastery, you're going to have to wake up. And so that's going to stimulate the defense mechanism within the evolution of our current state of being, which is designed to keep everybody where they're at so that we can, So let's talk about the 3 reasons that human beings resist spiritual evolution. So the first one is to protect the ego. So the ironic thing is that the ego is there to help you in terms of your standing in social structure. Because if you don't have an ego, I am so-and-so, I do this, I believe that, I'm passionate about this, I don't like this, I do like that, those are all ways that limit you and identify you, so that the collective unconscious, so that society, so that the machine can go, you would fit here in the machine because your ego says this. And so it's an unconscious survival mechanism for being part of the crowd, for being part of the machine. And so when you start to evolve beyond that, then our evolved mentality starts to freak out and says, oh my God, where will I fit in the machine? Because you think you need the machine. You think you need society. You need to be accepted and loved by the world, by people. It's interesting that, the people who act like the rebels, because, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on if we're talking politics. You're going to identify as the minority that's breaking through, and we're rebelling against, because you place the other side as that's the side that's telling me what to do, and I'm not going to let you, so I'm part of the minority. So, just to be the rebel, you have to follow political correctness, the political correctness of whatever your tribe is. And so it's really, the ironic thing is that you think that you're standing out and being unique, when in reality, you're just finding a way to fit in so that you can survive, so that you can be accepted. And so the resistance is going to be very strong. This is why these practices were kept secret. This is why governments would seek these guys out. And they would try and wipe them out of existence. And that's one of the reasons why, that was a old tradition that I was taught. I can't tell anybody about what I'm doing. I can't even show it to them. I can't even, talk to them about this lightning qigong. But that's an old way of thinking. We're in a new process of complete transformation. So that's the first reason. The first reason is to protect the ego. And the ego, again, is so that you can be a valuable tool for the machine, whatever machine that is, even if it's your group of friends, even if it's your family. They see you as you're this and you serve this function. When you start breaking out of that, people are going to get upset and you're going to be afraid. So you're going to be the first person to resist it, because you're going to realize, you're going to feel, I no longer identify with those old attachments, with those old limitations. That used to be who I was, that gave me comfort. You're not gaining comfort by that anymore, and your ego is starting to get upset, trying to rein you back in so that you can follow the rules and be accepted. It's about survival. It's an unconscious way of trying to survive by being accepted by the crowd. Because, as cavemen, the reason why, and even, before that, when we were just, chimpanzees or apes running around, you had to have social structure in order to survive. If you weren't part of the tribe, if you weren't part of, your society, you wouldn't survive. So it's a survival instinct that is outdated. It's unnecessary. You don't need that anymore. You can transcend. All right? So that's reason number one, is the reason why you are having resistance to your transcendence is to protect the ego. Second one is the fear of the unknown. So some of you have been contacting me and you're like, I have this resistance and there's not even a conscious thought to it. It's just, my body's even resisting doing the practices. And you think about that. When you started the practice, you felt all kinds of crazy power, and it felt really good. So it feels good to do it. In fact, if you've pushed through the resistance and you've done the practices, there's 3 practices. There's a morning, noon, and evening practice if you choose to do the whole practice. Then that if you have resistance going forward and you just follow through, you always feel better afterwards. Physically, you feel better and it feels good and you're glad you did it. But yet that resistance still comes up. It's because you're transcending beyond what your conscious mind can comprehend. That's the nature of evolution. When you talk about different levels of our physical reality, we live and function in 3 dimensions, but there are multiple dimensions beyond that. We just can't access them. But it would be like trying to communicate with somebody who only lived in a 2-dimensional world. They can't communicate to us, but we can do all kinds of things in their reality, and they think it's magic or the gods. Same thing with us. When ascended masters communicate with us, interact with us, we see them as these magical beings or these angels or these gods. They could just be people who are in 4 or 5 dimensions. And they can come in and interact with us in ways we can't comprehend, but we can't go to where they are. So that's the unknown. We don't know what it's like to be in 4 dimensions or 5 dimensions. And this practice is specifically to create what was called perfected immortals, which meant that when you shifted your frequency to a higher level, you would phase out of this existence and you would continue to exist. And so there's stories about people walking through walls and doing all kinds of things they couldn't do before, rising from the dead, etc., etc. That's what all this stuff is about. It's something that we are all capable of. And our modern science can't keep up with it because we have science that explains 3 dimensions. It's not capable of explaining 4 or 5 dimensions. So we don't understand. It's the unknown. And the fear of the unknown is the same as the fear of death. And it comes back to that same thing. You'll stop being who you are. You don't know what you're going to experience. So that's, again, the resistance. It's your limited 3-dimensional human form trying to say, we don't know. This could end our existence. So stop. Don't do it. Because the intellect cannot comprehend anything beyond 3 dimensions. And your intellect is there to help you to survive. The human intellect was something that that evolved in human beings to help them survive, how to find shelter, how to find food, how to adapt. The reason why human beings are the only hominids that are still walking around is because as the human race or different types of species of hominids were evolving, nature was trying different things out. So there were other kinds of 2-legged hominid creatures walking around. Some were really big, some were smaller, and they had very special niches for their environment. But then we went through climatic shifts, and so the only human hominid species, humans, that's why there aren't any, the Denisovans aren't around, or the Neanderthals. The reason why they're not around is because they were too specialized for their environment. But when the climate shifted, they couldn't survive, so they went extinct. Human beings were more crafty. They were more able to move with changes. They were more adaptable. That's what what is it that the Marines say? Adapt and something. Adapt is part of survival. So, but it's only focused on this 3-dimensional reality. So bear in mind, when you start going beyond 3 dimensions, which is what you're doing here, when you tap into this infinity and you tap into that lightning power just by simply, putting this hand here and doing this and breathing this way, I'm specifically not teaching you how to do it because I want you to actually put the time and effort into it. When you do that, your intellect starts to see that it doesn't understand what's happening. So it's going to try and stop you. Okay, so it doesn't understand. The fear of the unknown is the same as the fear of death. Bear in mind that your resistance is trying to protect you. It's mistaken, but it's trying to protect you. So don't beat yourself up, as you go through this resistance. If you need to back off on the practices a little bit, that's fine. Stay consistent so that you can continue with the process. But I'm trying to appeal to your awareness so that you can train yourself, that when you start to know the difference between, an honest instinct of, okay, there's a bear coming at me and my instinct is telling me to run, that's a good instinct. You want to follow that instinct. But the instinct that's telling you, I don't want to go and do that very simple breathing practice that makes me feel so good and changes me, I'm resisting that. You start to be able to identify the unconscious resistance, the resistance to your evolution. And then you start to go, oh, I'm feeling resistance. I must be on the verge of some powerful expansion. Because we're either in a state of expansion or contraction. People say you're either in love or in fear. Same thing. Energetically, you are either expanding or contracting. We always go through it, so it's okay to go through periods of contraction and expansion. But the more that you are conscious of, I can feel my resistance come up. But also bear in mind that your resistance, because it's there to try and protect you, it's going to adapt. So when you become aware, let's say if somebody starts to have for example, all of a sudden, they start to have a strange tingling feeling in their body, which frightens them, and that's how their resistance stops them from doing the practice. And then they start to associate that tingling in their physical body. Oh, I must be on the verge of transcending. I'm going to go practice now, or I am going to follow through with my commitment. This is why discipline is so important, and this is why I give the practice morning, noon, and night. And I give you the option to do all 3 of them or one of them. You want to just do the morning practice? Just do the morning practice. You want to just do the evening practice? Do the evening practice. But stay consistent. You want to do all 3? So much the better. You will transform even faster. If you're a brave person and you think that you can handle the transformation, this is what happens to a lot of people. Whenever they come to train with me in this forbidden practice that we've got here in the 90-day challenge, throughout the 20 years or so that I've been teaching it, I sit people down. This is what I used to do. People would come to me before I had the YouTube channel and all that, and people had to come physically and train with me, and they'd say they want to practice. I've heard of this and I want it. And I would sit them down and say, okay, let's have a meeting first. And I'd sit down with them and I'd say, listen, this practice is going to completely transform you on every level. And you're going to go through shifts and changes emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, physically that a lot of people can't handle. So I need you to consciously understand that. And then I would require that they commit to me for 6 months before I would even begin to teach them. And more often than not, they would say, oh, yeah, no problem. I've done tons of work on myself. I've done lots of shadow work. Oh, I'm ready for this. I'm like, okay, I warned you. But you're committing to me, and you're committing to the universe that you're going to stick with this for 6 months no matter what happens, right? Oh, yeah, totally. And then they would do it, and initially they would feel the power, and it would be amazing, and then they wouldn't show up. Or I'd get the text or the phone call or the something. So I said, I told you. So I'm telling you now, what I've done, I don't do what I did, 20 years ago, which was people would come in and I'd take them straight to the highest level practice because that's what I was doing. I have reverse engineered some of the more powerful, the more complicated, the more intense practices so that you can go through it more slowly, that you can train your meridian system and your nervous system and your chakra system to handle the changes better. But I still can't get rid of the transformation process altogether, and I can't prevent you from having unconscious resistance to this. And resistance can come in any form. It can come in emotional resistance to the practice. It can come with physical resistance. You might have a physical pain. You might, well, my back is bothering me for some reason. It's just your brain doing weird things to you, try and keep you from doing the practice. You might manifest problems. One of the main ones people say is, I don't have the money. And whenever people say that to me, I go, really, $55 a month? You seriously, you can't find $55. There isn't something. You stop watching, some cable television. Stop drinking coffee for a month. Are you seriously? You can't find $55. So the truth is, if I told you if you did this practice, you'd become a millionaire, you would find that $55 pretty fast. So you can manifest resistance in all kinds of ways. And just know that once you become aware of, when I get the tingling on my forehead that used to scare me, I realize, that's my resistance trying to stop me from the practice. Your unconscious goes, okay, he's figured out that one, we got to come up with a new one. So there's always going to be new sneaky ways that your mind, your intellect, your instincts for self-preservation, meaning staying limited and part of the crowd, being part of the machine, those instincts are going to do everything they can to stop you from going beyond its ability to control you. So that's the second reason, is the fear of the unknown. So embrace the unknown. That's the whole reason you're doing this. Yeah, I don't know what's going to be like once I have full conscious awareness of all of my thoughts and my feelings and my impulses. I don't know what's going to happen when I have the ability to experience other levels of reality, to experience myself on different timelines, different dimensions. I don't know what that's going to be. But instead of being afraid, be excited. What is on the other side of that mountain range? That's why people climb mountains. I mean, when I used to go backpacking in the Sierra Nevada mountains for, 2 weeks at a time by myself, I would find one peak and I'd climb to the top of it just to see what was on the other side. And then I'd get there and I'd go, oh, that's what's on the other side. But then there was another one. There was another peak over there. I got to climb over that, see what's on the, always ends up being, similar, but you have to see what's on the other side. See if you can train yourself to have that. I don't know what's going to happen. Let's go check that out. So that's reason number 2, is the fear of the unknown. That's the reason why we resist transcendence. And then here's probably the most important one, the most powerful one, the fear of abandonment. So remember what I said in the beginning, that the human species, remember, we're not that different from chimpanzees. You want to figure out what society is like? Study chimpanzee behavior. Seriously. It's the same thing. In fact, when we're talking about, 1% evolutionary difference, think about the difference between humans and chimps. We can do art, we can come up with philosophy, religion, science, music, telephones, internet. We can fly to the moon. We can send satellites to Mars. We could probably send people to Mars if we wanted to. The only difference between a chimpanzee and a human being, because the chimpanzees are the most closely related to humans than any other, animal on the planet, is 1% DNA difference. Chimpanzees are 99% human. The only difference between humans and chimpanzees is that 1%. 1%. And chimps cannot comprehend, they can't even do basic tasked with their hands. I mean, they got thumbs and fingers, but you try and give them a pen to write, they can't do it. Try and give them, a hammer and some nails and teach them how to build a house, they won't be able to do it. Very simple, hammer this nail here, put that there, they can't do it. Much less be able to communicate, verbally, communicate with signs and language. They don't have the ability because they are 1% away from us. So think of how vast the difference is, 1% of DNA. So imagine what's going to happen to you when you shift 1/10 of 1%. 1/10 of 1%, you're going to be beyond the comprehension of your other fellow humans. What does that mean? That means that they're going to reject you. That means you may reject them. You won't be able to relate. So part of what happens is people dumb themselves down just to be accepted. When it comes to fake news of any kind, there's the vast majority of people who don't know whether something is true or not, but they buy into a belief because they want to be accepted by their family. You want to be able to go and have Thanksgiving dinner with your family and not be yelled at and ostracized. So you better have the same political beliefs as them, even though it's nonsense. They dumb themselves down. That is part of our unconscious resistance. The fear of being abandoned, rejected. That is probably the most powerful one there is. And so some of you are doing this practice and you're finding yourself, I'm having anxiety. The anxiety could be that you're ready to shift 1/100th of a percent in your DNA and your awareness. Your energetic, your spiritual being is going to go 1/10 of 1% beyond what your limited three-dimensional intellect can process. And what's going to happen? You might be rejected. What happens if you don't love your friends like you did? Then you're going to be all by yourself. So the fear of abandonment. But I'm here to tell you that the great thing about this practice, this lightning power which surrounds the heart center, which normally is an intact container for the soul. It's self-contained, and it's there to protect the soul from the harshness of three-dimensional reality. That if you don't directly stimulate that energy will stay self-contained. But if you do very simple practices, literally, touch one finger to another, put the hand in a certain way, maybe even put the hand in a certain way, move and breathe in a certain way, it sets off a switch. And that self-contained lightning power, which is the most powerful energy source that you have, starts to be released through those meridians. You have meridians in the body which serve a certain function until you switch them on. Now you're also switching on things within your spirit, your mind, and dare I say your DNA. You're switching things on. And you're going to shift maybe 1/100th of a percent from where you are now. And that 1/100th of a percent is going to put you in a whole different reality. And you may have to go through the pain of not being loved, understood, and accepted. And then you may have to do what the original masters of this did. They just kept it secret for that reason. You go out and, like Superman wears, glasses and a regular suit so he can fit in. He's mild-mannered and meek so he can fit in. You might have to do that. You might, when you start becoming a superhero, you might have to go out in public and just kind of pretend to be like them to fit in. But it's a frightening, painful idea to be abandoned. And so, you don't have to even do this practice. People do this all the time. People will dumb themselves down. They'll sabotage themselves just to get the love and acceptance of their family, their spouses, their friends. But the powerful thing that I've seen is that's really very encouraging is that the more that you tap into this lightning power, which is here to protect the soul, it's like you expand that lightning out through your hands and into your spirit, into your mind, into your reality. You become less and less dependent on being loved and accepted. You start to experience what it's like to not need to be part of the pack, to be part of the tribe. You can still go and be part of the tribe, you can still interact, but you won't get the same experience, you won't need that anymore. The loneliness that we experience, where we need to have somebody love us, that starts to fade, and you start to realize that you have that eternal love within yourself, what I call an internal locus of control. You know, an external locus of control is you need something outside of you to make you feel good, to give you worth. And this is what, as I said in the previous video, this is what all religions, all politics, all philosophies, all organizations, governments, you know, what they all share in common is the belief in an external locus of control, meaning that something outside of you determines your internal experience of yourself, your internal state of being. Internal locus of control, when you start tapping into it, because it exists, and it's just whether or not you choose to tap into it. When you tap into that internal locus of control that we all have that lays dormant within us, you start to go beyond the need to fit in, to be part of the crowd, to be one of the chimpanzees, and you start to become more connected to the infinity of the universe. And that's where you gain your self-acceptance, your empowerment. But you have to be willing to go through that death of, you know, these are just 3 reasons, but you have to go through the death of dying to your limited ego. You have to go through the death of going beyond your fear of the unknown. And you have to go beyond your fear of being abandoned, unloved, or your fear of not loving or relating to others, not needing them. And, you know, those are very powerful things that our unconscious mind uses to keep us from progressing. So I'm giving you this for those of you who are on the 90-day Lightning Qigong subscription here at thunderwizard.com, because remember that I told you going into it. You can go back into previous videos before you did, and you can hear me say, here's what's going to happen. And now you think you knew what that meant until you experienced it. And that's why it's called unconscious, because, I didn't realize that this was going to affect me this way. But you also, realize that every time you push through that resistance and you do the work, even if there is some change that goes on, you'll realize objectively, my life is better, my life goes more smoothly, I feel better physically, I may have a lot of feelings, but my physical body, my physical health, you make more money, you have better relationships. So it's worth it. And it gets easier. The more you get into it, the more that you learn to overcome your resistance, and the more you start to put that part of your unconscious mind under your control. And it starts to obey you. Instead of causing problems and trying to sabotage your expansion, it starts to work for you. It becomes your servant. It's like a good dog. A really smart dog, if you don't train the dog and if you don't interact with the dog, it will take over. It will tear up the couch. It will poop on everything. It will treat you like it owns you, and you will have to run around trying to keep the dog happy. But if you give the dog what it wants, I'm talking about your unconscious mind, if you give your unconscious mind what it wants, which is to be directed and to be given limitations and to be given boundaries, it will then turn into your servant. And like a good trained dog, it'll sit and wait for your command, and then it will go off and do what you tell it to do. That will come with time and discipline. So it's really important that you stay disciplined. If you have to back off on the practice, that's fine. Stay disciplined and do something associated with the practice every single day. And don't do more than you can handle. Okay? Somebody, people come into this and they want to go all out, and I say, great. If you can do the morning, the afternoon, and the evening practice, and you can do that every day, you're going to expand your consciousness very quickly. But it's important to acknowledge your limitations and just be consistent, and you will grow and you will change. Again, level 3 is coming soon. Level 3, I'm going to take you to the next level, which is where we deal with the hands of infinity. And in the hands of infinity, what you're going to learn is that for every single action you take, which includes your thoughts, your beliefs, there are infinite numbers of timelines that are available to you, infinite numbers of next actions that you can take. And then you'll also learn that everything that happens to you, there are infinite numbers of responses. Something that could happen, come to your life, which could be disastrous. If you only have 2 or 3 options, it's going to be disastrous for you. But if you have infinite numbers of options, that potentially challenging external event that comes into your life is actually giving you the option to become a millionaire, for example. There's infinite numbers of reactions to anything that happens to you or anything that anybody does to you. Infinite numbers of reactions. And this is the path of creation. So this hands of infinity is actually the power of creation. You start to enter the realms of divinity. So we'll talk more about that when I release that. But right now we've got levels 1 and 2. And I know you haven't all done, there hasn't been enough time for people to go through 90 days of both 1 and 2. I recommend you stick with each level for at least 90 days. You can, I can't prevent you from looking ahead when I release new videos, but I recommend that you stay with each practice for at least 90 days. Reason why? Because if you go beyond that, you may be stimulating resistance that you won't be able to tolerate. You don't want, you have to, you're wrestling with a tiger here, and you want to make sure that you have the ability to handle, your abilities. You don't want to jump into the deep end right off the bat, because then you run the risk of having your unconscious mind completely win that fight. So take it in the increments that I give you. Try and follow the directions that I give you to the best of your ability. And if you are a subscriber on the Patreon channel and you're going through it, I'm available to you. You can write questions to me through that, and if I'm able to, I will answer those questions. All right? So that's it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to thunderwizard.com, click around until you see Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong, and you can subscribe. And you're only committing to 1 month. You don't want it? Don't subscribe next month. You're not committing your whole life to it. What have you got to lose? It's the price of less than the price of one Starbucks coffee every day. If you don't really that stressed for cash, don't have your daily coffee, and check this out. Because when you get to that ability where you can create your reality, where you're tapping into the 4th and the 5th dimension, and you can create your reality, money becomes the easiest thing to get. Just go, yeah, all I need to do is just go make more money. It's the easiest thing to do. All right, so that's it. Thunderwizard.com, courses.thunderwizard.com, all of my books, DVDs, all of my services. If you want me to give you an energy transmission to kickstart you forward, you can go to energyhealing.thunderwizard.com. Of course, subscribe, hit the bell button, and smash the like button. so that YouTube will see that this is important. If you're a follower and you like what I'm doing, then take these, the link to this video and put it on your Facebook or your Twitter. Get it out to other people. All right, that's it. I'll see you guys soon.